So there will come a point, probably at some point today, where I've got no other choice as a Jet fan but to embrace the future and the hope of this season turning around. But when I said that on Thursday, I meant it. And when I found out the news earlier this morning that the Jets were shockingly firing Robert Salah, my first reaction was not the same reaction a lot of Jet fans had, which is good. He sucks. Great. Let's turn the season around. My first reaction was, it's just another reminder that the franchise I happen to root for, the franchise that Joe Beningo happens to root for, the franchise that, 40% of people listening happen to root for, they are a dysfunctional mess that has no idea what they're doing.
The New York Jets suck.
And don't take that as a defense of Robert Salah. I have my issues with Robert Salah. But what I said on Thursday is the way I feel right now at 2:02 on a Tuesday.
And you're right.
Am I right?
You're absolutely right.
Firing this coach in the middle of the season for an interim and trying to have success that has never happened in the history of football is a desperate move. And the other thing that scares me, because we've had a few hours since this story broke, so a lot of little bits have come out. According to Peter Schrager, who I trust, Joe Douglas wasn't even in the room. So the owner of this team, for whatever reason, and there are a lot of theories, and we'll get to all of them, decided on his own, I'm firing the head coach. So for every Jet fan that thinks this is a good thing, great. Yeah, maybe it'll be a good thing. I hope it'll be a good thing. But in this moment, it's another sign that this organization is a clueless mess.
Well, when you are a game away, and that game potentially could be on Monday night, from being first place in your division 5 weeks into an NFL season, everything that you're saying makes no sense. Meaning, I'm going to fire the coach right now. Because it doesn't make sense. It makes you scratch your head. It makes you wonder why Joe Douglas has not spoken yet. This happened 3 hours ago. Joe Douglas is not scheduled to speak yet. Maybe one of the owners is going to speak.
I do want to add to that. At 2:30, Woody Johnson will speak.
Well, there you go. So at least I hope he accepts questions and is allowed to be, analyzed on why he made this decision, because it feels rash. It feels rushed. It feels like it was something other than football related. And we'll get to all of it. We'll hear from Woody Johnson, and then we'll make our own evaluations. But to me, this doesn't make sense at this juncture of the season. We've said it yesterday, and really the last couple of weeks, with this whole Aaron Rodgers offense situation with this New York Jets, because their defense is playing fantastic. And they kept them into that game over in London last weekend. But offensively, they're still trying to find their rhythm. Do they need some more accountability? Absolutely, because it's little things that are costing them from big moments or big plays or whatever you want to say. So maybe there's a lack of accountability that needs to be addressed. But you don't fire your coach when you're 2-3 in a game out of first place.
You know who does?
In the division.
You know who does, Tiki?
Woody Johnson does.
Organizations that are clueless. The New York Jets are a clueless mess of a franchise.
It feels like an emotional, rash decision.
Yes, it feels like a decision that I would make or Beningo would make or BT would make, and that's not a knock on the three of us. We're fans.
But you can't run your organization like a fan.
I know that. No, I agree with you. And I know people listening are going to somehow take this as, Evan, why are you defending Robert Salah? I'm not defending Robert Salah. But when they made the decision to let him start this season and be the head coach of this team, a decision that Sean and I argued about, and I own that. When you make the decision for him to be the head coach, I'm sorry, you can't 5 games into a season say, screw it. I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm going to make a change. I hope I'm wrong. I pray to the sports gods that we're going to be talking about Jeff Ulbrich as the next great NFL head coach.
And by the way, you could be.
We could be, sure. I hope so. That's why you're going to hear from 2 Evans today. The emotional Evan, who's pissed off that this franchise has no idea what they're doing. And then eventually there's make peace with this Evan, which we all do as sports fans. Where no matter what we think or how angry we are, we eventually say, all right, I hope it works. And you try to rationalize why it works. But I don't think this makes any sense. I think this is a franchise that's run by buffoonery. And I can't wait to hear from the owner at 2:30. We will hope and attempt to play it live right here on the Fan. And we'll hear from Woody Johnson so we can respond to it. But the one thing I ask from owners, whether it's James Dolan, Steve Cohen, Woody Johnson, John Mara, or anybody else, is hire the right people and let them make the decisions.
Right. Now, just as a quick aside on Jeff Ulbrich. Jeff Ulbrich is a hell of a hell of a coordinator and potentially a hell of a head coach. He's one of the rising stars from a defensive standpoint in the NFL. We always talk about the offensive head coaches, the Bobby Slokes of the world, or these other coordinators that are around, Ben Johnson, who's up in Detroit. But there are some defensive potential head coaches that were rising in people's minds. Jeff Ulbrich was one of them. He played for a long time. He is he's a hard-nosed, aggressive, but very well-liked defensive coordinator over there. So there's a chance this turns out to be a great move. But with that being said, it still feels like a rash, emotional move and not one based on anything football-related. And should Robert Salah be fired if their season goes the way? Sure. Of course. Ultimately, it's a performance-based business. You have to figure out how to win football games, and Robert Salah hasn't won enough of them. But at this point in this season, it feels so disruptive to fire your coach this early and really don't have a reason for it.
Well, there are three possibilities on why right now, before the Jets play a game for first place in the AFC East, that Woody Johnson made this decision. Three of them. Number one, they're 2-3, and he's frustrated, and he sucks, and the team's undisciplined, and they're a mess.
Not meeting the expectation.
Okay, that's option number one. Option number two, Woody Johnson used to work in the United Kingdom. He used to be the ambassador in the United Kingdom. And Woody Johnson was sitting there with his British friends and was embarrassed by the product on the field. That's option number two. Option number three may be breaking news to a lot of people listening. And I understand if it is. But to some, you may have heard this already. On Sunday, Robert Salah wore a Jet sweatshirt. On said sweatshirt was a Lebanese flag. Robert Salah is Lebanese, or at least his parents are Lebanese.
Yes.
And this is something the NFL has done over the last few years, where they allow coaches and players to wear the country of a flag of where they're from, or where their parents are from, or where their heritage is. So Robert Salah wore a Lebanese flag. Based on what's going on in the world, based on the anniversary of that horrible day a year ago, October 7th, there were some, maybe many, who were offended by that flag being worn. And they took it, right or wrong, as a political message. It is possible, and Woody's got to answer that question.
Right. Somebody's got to ask him that question.
Did you fire Robert Salah because you were upset about the flag he wore on his shirt because you did think it was a political message? I have no idea if it was. Some people feel like it is. Some people feel it was a protest. It was a comment on what's going on right now in the world. I don't know if that's the case, but what we do need to know from the owner of this team, did that lead to you making this decision?
Yeah, because ultimately, as we've been saying, and I'm sure others have said as well, the timing of this feels very odd. Now, it is a long week, put that in quotes, because they play on Monday, so there's an extra day. Tuesday is a bye day, and generally speaking, so it is a day where it's not going to be disruptive to whatever plan was going in from practice standpoint or media standpoint or whatever it may have been, so guys aren't around. So in some regards, it's the right day to do it if you're going to do it. It just feels really early in the season after a 2-3 start with Aaron Rodgers still finding his new sea legs after his Achilles injury from a year ago, to fire the head coach because of what it means for everybody. So, because right now, when your head coach gets fired, it tells you we either go win it all or get deep into the postseason, or there are wholesale changes coming. So my job's not safe. Your job's not safe. The guy next to you's job's not. The GM's job's not. Everybody's on notice when you fire your head coach this early. And so sometimes that it motivates guys. A lot of times it makes you so worried you can't do your job.
Right.
And I've been there before, and it's rough. It's a rough grind when your head coach is fired and you still got to go do your job because you think you're next. And that creates a very hard environment. So this is where I mean, Jeff Ulbrich in his interim fashion is going to earn his paycheck over the next few weeks.
All I care about and all Jet fans care about is winning. That's all we care about. And this is a season where winning was the expectation and winning was the demand.
Yes.
If they didn't win this year, everybody's gone. And when I say winning, I don't mean 9-8. I don't mean that. I don't mean 10-7. I mean being a playoff team and going on some kind of run. I'm not going to tell you it was Super Bowl or bust, but they needed to be legitimate. They needed to be a legitimate contender. And what worries me, and maybe for some Jet fans you throw this out, and maybe you throw this out, T, because one of the arguments we've had over the months and year plus that we've worked together is, Evan, stop caring about history. It doesn't matter. Right. Well, here's a piece of history that concerns me. When in the history of this sport, not the NBA, not Major League Baseball, not the NHL, in this sport, the NFL, when has this worked? I want you to tell me when this has worked. We can do this in baseball all day. Met fans are about to look across the aisle and see it this afternoon. Rob Thompson is a living, breathing example of it working. They fired Joe Girardi, and the Phillies went on a great run. Teams have that in baseball. Teams have that in the NBA. It doesn't happen in the NFL. So trust me, we Jet fans are in the same boat. We're desperate for winning. We all are in that same area. We just want to see them win. Where I differ with you for now, until I have to make peace with this decision, is I don't see how this gets you any closer to winning. I had an argument with Tommy a few days ago about it. I stand by our argument. I said to Tommy, I get it. Robert Salah stinks, this and that. I don't believe this decision gets you closer to winning. And I want to win. Right. We all want to win.
Of course.
There's no tangible proof or evidence that changing your head coach, hiring an interim, leads to anything. Rich Bisaccia is like the one example.
Well, yeah, no, you're right. Bisaccia did it, and actually, I mean, maybe it's a Raider thing because Antonio Pierce kind of did it, even though they didn't win ultimately and they didn't make the postseason. But the culture changed pretty immediately out in Las Vegas with the Raiders. The one thing that you can, I guess, count your blessings on with this is that operationally, meaning offense and defense and special teams, nothing's going to change because unlike with some head coaches in the league who call plays on either the offensive defense side of the ball, that's not Robert Salah's task.
Right.
It hasn't been his task. Jeff Ulbrich calls the defense. Nate Hackett calls the offense. And so the operations aren't going to change. And so this really becomes a put more on Jeff Ulbrich's plate, but everything else is kind of going to stay the same. But it also creates this tense, what the heck is going on moment for this team and for this organization.
And let's get to the quarterback, because the quarterback's the biggest problem. I mean, if we're going to have an honest discussion about this, Aaron Rodgers has sucked the last 2 weeks. It doesn't mean he can't.
And he said so, by the way.
No, and I appreciate that.
Right.
Listen, I appreciate that Aaron Rodgers isn't delusional to think he isn't the problem. He is the problem. This offense is the problem. The reason the Jets lost the last 2 weeks is because their quarterback has not played well enough, because their offense has not played well enough. That's got to change. And as of right now, nothing's changing with that. Aaron Rodgers is still the quarterback. Nate Hackett is still the offensive coordinator. They haven't traded for Devontae Adams. And if Aaron Rodgers had anything to do with the firing, if he was the one who said, I've had enough of Robert Salah, if that's the case, it just puts even more on the plate that what we already knew, which is this is all about this quarterback.
Right.
And he better freaking win. And so far, unlike the other ones who've come here, what's the word I use for these guys again?
Mercenary piece of crap.
Thank you, Loogie. Unlike the other mercenary pieces of craps, they gave you something. Wasn't a lot, but they gave you something. Aaron Rodgers, other than agita and a lot to talk about on sports talk radio, has given us nothing.
Look, I hope that's not the reason, and I don't think it is. Usually you get a gut about these things just from, and we're on the outside. We have no idea. But usually you get a gut about these type of things. You felt it with the Nets, to be honest with you. It felt like, oh, yeah, this is definitely from the stars.
This is the same thing, by the way. The Nets and the Jets are like they're cousins.
But this doesn't feel like an Aaron Rodgers thing. It doesn't feel like – because if Aaron Rodgers was doing this, he kind of would let us know. You know what I mean? Because that's
Would he, though?
Yes. Oh, I see what you just did. Nice one, Sean.
Well, hasn't he already let us know between the cadence debate and the push heard around the world?
But like whenever he does a media session, like you if you read between the lines or read the undercurrent of what he's saying, it feels like, yeah, I orchestrated this. You're going to see something happen. It doesn't feel like that.
Well, he speaks tomorrow, so we'll hear what he has to say tomorrow.
The owner of this team, Woody Johnson, will speak in about 15 minutes. We will do our best to listen to it, to hear it, and to react to what the owner of the Jets has to say after this shocking decision. The happiest person right now about the Robert Salah firing? Aaron Judge, because at least for a few minutes, he doesn't get the heat of Yankee fans after again not producing and the Yankees falling even to Kansas City at 1-1. We will get to the Yankees later. For the Met fans in the car, you better be in the car because you got to get there early. There's a lot of traffic. The vice president's in town, and you do not want to miss first pitch. Met fans will be talking to you. Yankee fans will be talking to you. But Jet fans, are you really celebrating another example of the New York Jets being a completely clueless organization? Your call's next, 888-808-1019.